The armed forces of Ukraine dealt a powerful blow to the Russian troops in Svatovo. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Happy viewing! The Ukrainian army is rapidly advancing towards the key city of the Lugansk region. On November 29, Russian forces continued to defend against Ukrainian counteroffensive operations northwest of Svatovo. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, Russian forces continued standard defensive operations in the Kupiansky direction of the Kharkiv region. Russian forces are constantly shelling Ukrainian positions in Kupiansk, but said Ukrainian forces are holding the line and fighting back against Russian forces. On November 29, Ukraine continued its counteroffensive in the direction of Svatovo and Kremenaya. The General Staff of Ukraine reported that Ukrainian forces attacked the area where Russian troops were concentrated in Svatovo.Luhansk region, which, according to the head of the Luhansk region Serhiy Gaidai, was a deployment point and an ammunition depot. A Russian source said that Russian troops had begun offensive operations along the Svatovo-Kremenaya line and suggested that operations would intensify in the coming days as the weather improved. In addition, Ukrainian troops continue to strike Russian rear areas in the Luhansk region along critical ground communications and strike at the Latugino staging area, southwest of Luhansk, along the H-21 highway. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that the armed forces of Ukraine repelled attacks by Russian troops in the Novosilovskoye area, 14 kilometers northwest of Svatovo, and Russian sources claimed that Russian troops captured Novosilovskoye. Fighting in Donbass. Russian troops continued to advance in the Bakhmut area amid reports of heavy fighting in the area on November 29. Geolocation footage released on November 29 shows Russian troops advancing towards the southeastern outskirts of Bakhmut. The General Staff of Ukraine reported that Ukrainian forces repelled attacks northeast of Bakhmut in the Bakhmutsky area along the T-1302 highway and in the Soldar area. Various Russian sources also claimed that on November 29, Russian forces took control of the Seversky-Donets-Donbass Canal, 13 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, which directly affects the water supply to Gorlovka and Yasinovataya. Active operations of the armed forces of Ukraine near Svatovo and imaginary victories of the Russians in Mariinka, maps of battles. Russian military correspondents also circulated unconfirmed claims that Russian troops had broken through the Ukrainian defenses on the T-0513 highway towards Shaysovoy Yar, which, according to ISW, is unlikely. The Russian blogger also stated that Russian troops advanced at Opatnoy, 4 kilometers south of Bakhmut, and launched a ground attack on Klishchevka, 7 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut, on November 29. The Russians prematurely called the operational offensive around Bakhmut the first victory since the capture of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. However, there is no evidence that Russian forces currently threaten key Ukrainian logistical routes to Bakhmut, and ISW continues to assess that Bakhmut is not currently threatened by Russian encirclement. On November 29, Russian forces stepped up offensive operations northeast of Bakhmut in the area of Seversk and Soldar, likely in an attempt to capitalize on the boost in morale resulting from the claimed Russian successes in the Bakhmut area. The Ukrainian General Staff reported that Ukrainian forces repelled attacks near Serebryanka, Verkhnekamenskoye, Berestov, Belogorivka and Yakovlivka, all within 35 kilometers northeast of Bakhmut. Russian sources claim that Russian troops were conducting offensive operations against fierce resistance along the T-1302 highway in the area of Belogorovka and Yakovlevka. They also claimed that Ukrainian troops had suffered heavy casualties and that Russian troops had taken Spern and also advanced through Verkhnekamenskoye towards Seversk, but Wagner financier Yevgeny Prigozhin denied this claim and stated that fighting in Spurnoy was ongoing. Russian sources claimed that on November 29, Russian troops made progress in the Avdiivka area. A well-known Russian blogger claimed that Russian troops controlled more than two-thirds of Marinka. However, another Russian military commander acknowledged that the pace of Russia's progress in this area is slow. Ukrainian officials said Ukrainian forces repulsed Russian ground forces in the area of Pervomaysky, Nevelskoye and Krasnogorovka. The situation in the south. Russian forces continued to strengthen their defensive positions in the east of the Kherson region, and on November 29 they carried out planned shelling of the right bank of the Dnieper. The General Staff of Ukraine reported that Russian forces have increased their administrative law enforcement presence in the occupied Kherson region and plan to send units of the National Guard to the area. As ISW previously reported, the use of Russian Guard units to guard the rear means that these units are not available for combat actions at the front or to strengthen existing defenses. Such elements of the National Guard could eventually bolster Russian defensive capabilities throughout the occupied Kherson region, confirming ISW's recent assessment that Russian forces are serious about the threat of a possible Ukrainian counteroffensive in the future. Geolocation satellite images show that between November 15 and 28, Russian troops built existing defensive fortifications along and perpendicular to the E58/M14 Kherson-Melitopol highway in the Fedorovka, Volyn and Stepnoy Kherson regions. Russian troops continued to shell areas along the right bank of the Dnieper, including the cities of Kherson, Chernobivka, Antonovka and Berislav. Ukrainian forces continued to strike at Russian troop concentrations and military installations. The General Staff of Ukraine reported on strikes on 4 areas of concentration of Russian troops, including Pologi, Tokmak and Bazin of the Zaporozhye region, along the T-0401 highway. As a result of the attacks, the losses of the invaders amounted to 470 personnel, 50 pieces of military equipment and an unspecified amount of ammunition. Ukrainian sources reported explosions in Skadovsk, Genichesk and Novoaleksivka in the Kherson region on November 29. The Russian Ministry of Defense said that Russian air defense systems intercepted 2 Ukrainian Uragan MLRS missiles in the area of Nova Kakhovka. On November 29, Russian troops continued shelling west of Gulyaipol and the Dnepropetrovsk region. Russian and Ukrainian sources report that Russian troops attacked the cities of Dnipro and Sinelnykovo, 40 m southeast of the Dnieper, at night. Russian troops fired on Nikopol and Marganets in the Dnepropetrovsk region.